Hello, my friends out there in YouTube. My name is Ryan Freeman. Welcome to my life. Welcome to this channel. I promised you a miracle on the next episode, and I will bring it forth. This is not your typical miracle. This is a miracle that was birthed from sin, the sin of the flesh. And with that being said, I will try not to be too salacious. However, I have to tell this story, and it involves masturbation. So please, if you squeam and squirm, that is not my fault. I gave you a fair warning. With that being said, Christianity had a profound influence on my sexuality. First of all, it gave me a shitload of guilt. It made me reject all of the impulses that were coming from within me. I did not want to masturbate. I mean, I did, but I didn't. So the teachings from the church, the overwhelming presence of the atmosphere growing up under a Christian religious education is that lust is bad. Lust. That overwhelming urge for you to go towards the object of your desire, be it a man, be it a woman, whatever it is, this is what populates the world. Without lust, without the desire to make love, whatever word you want to use for it, there is no life. And so nature has built within us this incredible desire to go and enjoy our bodies and enjoy it with one another. And when you find the person who shares the same interest, then you make love, and that's gorgeous, right? Or you have fun, or whatever. But under the Christian aegis, particularly the evangelical American Baptist raising that I had, sex was not tolerated outside of marriage, so fornication, frowned upon. And masturbation was not really explicitly talked about, but it was implicit that this was a big no-no. Also, on top of that, God is heavily watching your every action. He can watch you in the bathroom. So every time you're jerking it, he's watching you. And so when I first started to experiment with self-satisfaction, I always felt God was watching. And then I didn't want to think about God while I was trying to do that. And so my whole brain was being scrambled up with my natural impulses. This is the biggest problem with the religion. I think if religion's done well, then you're in a harmony with your nature. Your natural energies are channeled in a productive way that doesn't repress you, because if you're repressed, you will have psychological problems. That was the whole point of Sigmund Freud. If you repress your natural urges, then you will become mentally ill. Of course, perhaps there's much to be said about not giving free sway to your nature. I don't know. Everyone has to make up their own decision, but religion does affect all of us differently. And for me, and probably a lot of people out there, it gave me a ton of guilt. It gave me so much guilt that I wanted to quit masturbation. So I quit, and I made an oath to God when I was 16 years old at a summer camp on a Thursday. I said, God, I will not masturbate ever again. I swear to you. And if I swore to God, there was no way that I would break that oath, because I didn't want to go to hell. Who wants to go to hell? Eternal torment. And you swear to God and you're going to break that? Do you love your Creator? These were the thoughts in my head. So I made this oath to God because I didn't want to perpetually give into the temptation to enjoy myself. And for anyone out there, if you haven't spent a long time away from your adolescence, or you're a woman and you don't know what goes through a guy's head, when a guy is young, particularly in his early teen years and all the way through his teens and into his 20s and even into his 30s and perhaps for the rest of our lives, I have no idea. Sex is so important. The sexual impulse. We may deny it, we may sublimate it, and channel it towards other things. We may ignore it. We may repress it. But hey, this is the energy that makes the world go round. I don't know if it makes the world go round, but it makes the flowers spring up, the geese, the peacocks, the lions, we all follow our nature to some degree, and sex is a big part of that. And Christianity teaches you that, first of all, your flesh is wicked. The original sin, you know. And even when it's not explicitly stated, the sex is never talked in a celebratory way or celebratory way. It's never celebrated. It's beautiful. If you look back at all of the best moments of your life, of course, when your child is born, when you're taking a magic mushroom with your best friend at a high point in the forest, on the mountains, overlooking a sunset, lots of great things. But for me, and probably for many people, making love is the most beautiful thing in the world. Everything else is sort of shades below that. But we're so afraid to actually embrace that. And I was doubly afraid. I think a lot of my friends, most of my friends were pretty sane, you know. They believed in God, they believed in Jesus, they went to Vacation Bible School and all of that, but they did not prohibit themselves from enjoying themselves. I did. I was a zealous, holy, righteous person trying to have a perfect walk with God. And as a result, I declared war on my body. And at 16, on that Thursday, at summer camp, in the cabin, I made an oath to God, swore to him I will not masturbate, and I upheld that. Now, did it make me a better person? No, it gave me a little spiritual pride because I felt that I was superior to my friends who tried to quit because they also dealt with guilt. Guilt for our sexuality is just predominates through anyone with any sort of inkling of a religious education. I was able to uphold it. I felt better about myself. Spiritual pride. But I didn't feel good all the time. When I wasn't patting myself on the back, I was in knots inside. The urges and the messages my body was giving me, and I kept pushing it back, it only got stronger. 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. 4 years. No masturbation. Well, what do you think happens to a pressure cooker when you don't release the steam and the pressure keeps increasing? It's going to blow. A volcano, if it doesn't release its pressure, what happens, you know? I mean, you keep blowing up a balloon, but you don't let the air out, it goes pop. Well, I ended up going pop. Every date I went on a lot of dates from the age of 16 after I got my license at 16. A month later, failed the first time, got it a month later, and I would go on dates, take a girl to the movie theater, take her to Wiener Schnitzel, take her to the park, whatever. And after, dinner and a movie, I would make the move to French kiss. And well, the thing is, if I was masturbating regularly, like most sane teenagers, it would have been fine. Just a French kiss, that would have been whatever. If it went further, it would have went further. If it stopped there, it would have stopped there. But for me, because I had all of that pressure from rejecting my sexuality, from rejecting masturbation, from making that oath to God, when I was French kissing, boom, ba, boom, wet pants. I kill them in my pants every single time. And I was a free baller, still am a free baller, proud to be a free baller. I think wearing underwear is extraordinarily uncomfortable. Don't hate you if you do. But I would end up with wet pants on every single date for years. Well, not actually for years, for a long time, until I finally said, I got to do something about this. So I didn't wear a diaper. I didn't start to wear thick boxers or anything like that. That might have been a nice way to work around it, but not me. No, I said, well, better not to come in my pants, better to come outside of my pants. So I became a whip out artist. I whipped it out, and well, let's see what happens. So I ended up whipping my dick out every single time I ended up getting intimate with a girl. I don't condone that. I don't think that's healthy sexual practices. I do not recommend that. The only reason I was doing that because I thought it would be a terrible sin to masturbate. Because I couldn't relieve myself, it was either come in my pants, perhaps there was other ways, perhaps I could have worn a diaper. I didn't do it, I don't know why. That probably would have been more of a violation to me. So I whipped it out. Judge me as you will. The girls were fine with it. I'm not going to go into details with it. It was a bit of a surprise to some. I highly don't recommend that. I think that that's not a good way to go about things. But that's what I did. I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't so twisted up. You see, I think... Okay, this is just another side story. I'll get back to sexuality and religion. But like when I went to Europe, I went to some countries where they were more liberal with marijuana and alcohol than our country. Things are different today. This is 20 years ago, 15 years ago. I didn't see a lot of problems. You could drink in public, but I didn't see a lot of drunk assholes. Didn't see any fights. Marijuana, people were smoking marijuana. It was tolerated. It wasn't necessarily legal. Talking about Switzerland. There was no problems. People were doing it with taste, casually. On beaches or outside areas. It wasn't a problem. But in America, we have such a hang-up about alcohol. We used to have it about marijuana. We still have it about sex because of this Christian upbringing. Because I'm not a theologian, but if you go back and you read all of the very influential theologians, the patricians, the men, maybe women, I don't know, but mostly men, who wrote about Christian theology, commentary, exegesis on Scripture, they all basically condone sex for reproduction, but really thought it was not a good thing. Almost, in the most despicable terms. And our body is, while our body is a temple, but they don't actually treat it like a temple. I think sex is beautiful. Sex is wonderful. Now, of course, responsibility towards it, not being a whip-out artist. I do not condone whipping it out. But it's not something to be so condemned and so vilified. But that was the education that I got. Not explicitly in all circumstances, but there were a lot of youth pastors that just hit that nail hard. Lust is bad. The urges of the flesh, the temptations of the flesh. You need to be holy before God and man. Well, that's a great story, and I tried. I tried harder than anyone else in my peer group. I held out for 4 years. 4 years. And then I broke my promise. I had a dark night of the soul. I wrote a poem to God renouncing my oath to him. I still have the poem. It's 4 or 5 lines long, 6 lines long. It rhymes. It was very meaningful to me at the time. This was a big part of my identity. I was the guy who was holy before God, seeking his favor. And then I just couldn't hold out any longer. And whipping out in front of the girls all the time, how long could that go on? Definitely wouldn't fly today. And I'm glad I renounced that oath. That's a shitty oath. See, the thing is with religion, if it's nice and casual, and you're just pious, you go to church and, it helps you become a better person, that's great. But when you take it dogmatically or legalistically like I did, then it becomes this. It's a terrible thing, man. I'm not an expert on Islam. You can correct me if you are an expert. But when I was in Egypt, when I was 21, there were a lot of young Egyptian men who were giving me the look of lust. And I would ask them if they had any opportunities to date girls, and they said, no, we can't date girls. There's no dating. You basically get engaged and then you get married. And you can only do that if you have so much money. So I found all of these young dudes, young guys, who basically had, at least growing up as an evangelical Baptist in America, I could date and still fool around. I didn't fornicate, I was having sex. Depends on your definition of sex. Is it only genital sex? Is it all sexual configurations? Up to you. I was still having sex in a way, although in my mind I wasn't technically fornicating. I wasn't technically having intercourse, penetration. I wasn't masturbating, but I was doing something perhaps even more obnoxious, whipping it out on girls that I'm kissing, I won't go into details beyond that. Nothing forced, anything, well, not forced, but still not polite, not polite. But these Muslim guys that I met in Egypt, they had no outlet, and I got to imagine that had some relation to the way that they were looking at me with these lustful eyes. This desire, guys go to jail, prison for years and years. They didn't want to sleep with other men, but hey, we have a desire to make love, man. This is a wonderful, passionate part of us. And when it's shut down, it looks for other outlets. I got to imagine that most of what ISIS, ISIL, whatever you want to call them, most of the fundamental terrorists, these are guys who have promises of sleeping with virgins in heaven. And so it's like, I can't have sex with anyone around me. Sure, I'll go blow something up if it gets me up in the sky on a nice lounging chair and having virgins. Like, we're motivated by sex. We could deny it, we could pretend it's not true, but ultimately we are. And I was. And I've tried to hold it down, and by holding it down, it led to misbehavior, in my opinion. And this was the hardest part of my life. At that point. And so on July 13th, 2002, I renounced my oath, wank it for the first time. I got some physical relief, but had psychological guilt, mental anguish. But the next day, a miracle happened. The next day, I got a call from an Israeli asking me, do I want to go to Israel for free? Now, part of the story I did not mention. Part of my whole desire to please God and be perfect in His sight, I wanted to be Jewish. Well, I was born to a Christian family. What can I do? Well, at least I can go to the Holy Land. So I prayed to God to send me to Israel for free. And then after I prayed to God, I thought, well, why don't I take matters into my own hand? So I jumped on the computer and I typed in free ticket to Israel, found a website, israelforfree.com. And it was an application for any American between 18 and 24 to go to Israel for free. Filled out the application. There was one question, are you Jewish? Left that blank, clicked submit, got an error signal, closed the window, thought, there's no such thing as a free lunch. That's what I learned from economics class. There's nothing free. This is bullshit. Forgot all about that. But the day after I masturbated, playing Warcraft 3 with my friend Joel, I get a call from Momo. Shalom, do you want to go to Israel? Yes. You forgot to finish your application. Huh? Months prior. I completely forgot about that application. So this guy Momo from this organization, Oranim, calls me, asks me if I want to go to Israel for free. I tell him yes. He runs through my details, asks me, are you Jewish? And I say, I don't know. I don't know if I'm Jewish. Am I Jewish? My aunt researched my family ancestry, said we're Sephardic Jews. So I tell him, I say, I don't know. He said, what do you mean you don't know? I said, I don't know. My aunt researched my family history. She says we're Sephardic Jews. He says, what do you mean, man? Are you Jewish or not? I said, I don't know, but he didn't want to accept I don't know. So I said yes. So although I was raised as a Baptist Christian, going on the data that my aunt's genealogy was perhaps correct, I borrowed a kippah, one of those little hats that religious Jewish people wear. And less than a month later, I expedited my passport and I was on a free flight to Israel for free. And I took that as a sign from God that I would discover something about this conflict, about flesh and about spirituality. And in the next episode, I will talk about that trip because this was a massive turning point for my life. My name is Ryan Freeman. I hope you enjoyed the story. This is a true story, as ridiculous as it is, perhaps even scandalous as it is. It is a true story. We learn from each other from telling our truth. I hope that you enjoy this. We all deal with the guilt in life. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're from. Someone is trying to tell you to live a certain way. Some of us have a more thorough indoctrination. Some of us have a less thorough indoctrination. But we all have to somehow come to an equilibrium to actually live our life and not be neurotic. So for me, a lot of my videos deal with this topic. This was a big part of it, so I couldn't really ignore it. I wanted to not even talk about this video at all, but ultimately, if I'm going to go through with this whole YouTube process and share these stories, this is a big one, so I had to share it. So I hope that you enjoyed it. My name is Ryan Freeman. I will talk about this trip to Israel in the next episode. See you soon.